Here we go. Convene the meeting for June 20th for the Technical Coordinating Committee. First item is public comment. Any members of the public wish to comment? Seeing none. The next item is the approval of summary actions from the last meeting. Sure. Let's do self-introductions. I'm Paul Reinders of the City of Pittsburgh. On my left,
Eric Hugh, Transpec.
Andy Smith, City of Walnut Creek staff, Transpec.
Jerry Fay, Contra Costa County.
Steve Kersavan, Brentwood.
Leah Greenblatt, WIC-TAC staff.
Kevin Rohani, City of Oakley.
Heather Ballinger, City of Walnut Creek, City County Engineers Rep. I can't remember.
Who am I today?
Who am I here for?
Jill Mercurio, City of San Pablo, WIC-TAC.
Yvette Ortiz, City of El Cerrito, WIC-TAC.
Jason Chen, City of Orinda, SWAT.
thank you. So now we'll get to the first item, which is approval of actions from the last meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Motion passes, or item approved. Next item, or consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve this consent calendar?
Motion to approve.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. So the first item we have is item 5, project monitoring, deadlines for federal aid projects. Stephanie, want to give us an update?
Yes, sure. So this is our standing item. Staff continues to monitor the OBAG 2 projects, HSIP project, ATP project, HBP projects. Basically, MTC is increasing a lot of monitoring efforts or relaying that request to the CMA. So I'm continuing to bug you guys for updates of milestone dates and making sure you guys are hitting all the necessary deadlines. So just want to point to your attention to the FY 1920 OBAG 2 projects. That's on page 5-5. So there's, on the table it shows 8, but Walnut Creek is going to push out their Ignacio Valley Oak Grove rehab project, the first one on the list. So there are 7 that we're paying closer attention to. So if you don't have your field review done, so basically it's Panoa and Antioch. If you don't have your field review at least scheduled, please do so pretty soon. MTC will be engaging us in doing an obligation plan for FY 18-19. So having a field review at least schedule is sort of a gauge of readiness. So if you haven't scheduled one, please do so. And then lastly, I wanted to point out about the inactive projects, which is on page 5-14. From MTC, it looks like California has reached their goal of having their inactive project below 2%, is at 1.8, or California is 1.8% of the whole. So they're happy about that. So continue to invoice often and regularly. And if the dates shown on these tables shows a later date of, for example, right now it shows August 20th, it's being on in the table already shows that you're missing the regional deadline. So please continue to submit your invoices in a timely manner. And then just a couple of things I wanted to highlight. So I represent the county on these project delivery working group meetings at MTC, and it's for all the Bay Area CMAs. So we're starting this effort of having sub-regional project delivery working group, so we call it PDOG. So we're hosting one mid-August, hopefully here in Contra Costa. It will be Contra Costa and Alameda. So they're doing sort of going around. So the next one will be sometime in August. I'm trying to nail down the date. So when we have a date, it'll be very important for your SPOCs or single point of contacts to come to those. I think right now it's going to be August 14th. That's tentative. So it'll be middle of summer. Hopefully either your SPOC or someone on your staff can come. So the goal of the meeting is to talk about any countywide issues or even our Alameda or Contra Costa specific issues that we're dealing with, and also for us to meet our local assistant engineers. And as you know, we have 2 new ones assigned to us. So it'd be a good time to meet them, and also they are supposed to bring forth any issues that they see from their end. So I think it'd be a good opportunity for all of us to meet. And then also related to having these 2 new local assistance engineers, please continue to give me feedbacks about how you're working with them. I'm sort of logging them as I go, and we'll engage Sylvia or whoever that we need to resolve any issues that we have. So you can tell me those feedback or opinions or offline if you could. That'd be great. And I'll continue to take those comments. And with that, I'll take any questions that you guys may have.
Seeing none, thank you, Stephanie. Next item is the release of the draft 2019 Congestion Management Program. I think that's Matt.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, committee members. Matt Kelly with CCTA here to present the draft 2019 Congestion Management Program. I'm sit here every 2 years presenting this, so my apologies to those who have seen this several times before, but it's a requirement, so we'll proceed. So the Congestion Management Program is legislatively required by the state of California. It's required that we update it at least every 2 years, and we've done so since the legislation was passed back in 1991. I say this every time, but I'll say it again. The original Congestion Management Program legislation was based on our, at the time, kind of groundbreaking growth management program. So the state thought it was a good idea and incorporated a lot of the elements of it into the congestion management program. So for that reason, we treat the CMP as kind of a technical document where we, document changes over time, but really defer to our growth management program for several of the requirements of the CMP. As I mentioned, this is mostly a technical update, the 2019 update, and we're focusing on bringing it up to date with any changes that have occurred since 2017. So the major requirements of the CMP are to have traffic level of service standards that apply to a system of designated routes that include at least all state highways and principal arterials. We must have a performance element that includes measures to evaluate current and future multimodal system performance. A 7-year capital improvement program that seeks to improve the performance of that multimodal system. A program to analyze the impacts of local land use decisions on the regional transportation system, which is basically our growth management program, part of our growth management program, and a travel demand element that promotes alternatives to the single occupant vehicle. Another requirement is that we are consistent with the current RTP. We demonstrated that with the 2017 CMP, so we didn't really have to do much there. The document proves that the authority is consistent with Plan Bay Area 2040. We won't have to do that again till the 2021 RTP is updated or adopted. So the chapters that we focused on this time around were the performance element. We reached out to all the transit providers to get their latest performance metrics that they use, whether it's headways, frequencies, types of services, so forth. So those are updated for all but 2 of our transit providers. So I'll be working with them to get some final updates while the draft is out. We updated the capital improvement program. You might remember me coming around to the RTPCs over this spring to talk about that, and I'll get into that a little bit further in a few minutes. And also back to the performance element, we also document our own performance measures that we use here in the countywide bike ped plan, the action plans and the countywide transportation plan. We focused or made some focused updates to the level of service standards chapter. In the CMP, we are required to monitor level of service. As you know, the state has changed the rules around level of service and removed it from CEQA as a overriding factor. And so we're basically just waiting for the state to kind of chase its own tail and make the CMP compliant with the CEQA rules, where they've got level of service outlawed in one and required in another. So in that chapter, we kind of talk about possible options for level of service, or where level of service could go in the CMP. We think it'll probably go to a more VMT or something other than LOS in the future, but there will need to be some new legislation for the CMP to change that. And we also focused on our model consistency. So our travel demand forecasting model needs to be consistent with MTC's model. And we also talked about the changes we're planning on making to our model in terms of migrating to an activity-based model, and also the changes we recently made in upgrading the land use in the model. Some other major components, or one major component is the level of service monitoring, which we did this spring. You might have seen us out, not us, but our consultants out in your community collecting data at intersections. We didn't hear back from any of you, or not many of you anyways, regarding that process. So hopefully everyone got permits were taken out when they needed to be, and there was no disruption. I heard about some equipment out in the field about a month ago. That wasn't ours. They were hoses across the roads. Those weren't ours. I saw some right over here on the Geary overpass, and I think those were the same ones that we're seeing in Orinda and other places. I still don't know where they came from, but they weren't ours. Ours were all at the intersection, and they were usually cameras. So we'll be bringing those level of service monitoring reports to you in the fall. We did 65 intersections around the county, and then level of service on freeway segments. And at the intersections, we also collect those bike and ped counts. So all that information will be available for you guys to use if you need them in any, planning studies or traffic impact reports that you may be doing in the near future, once that draft monitoring report is available. On to the CIP. So we gave you guys about a month to update your projects using our new online database tool. For the most part, I think it went okay. I know there were some, people found some issues with the database, and, so I asked for feedback. We got feedback, so we're now trying to incorporate feedback on the actual structure and the fields and how you the user interface of the online database. So we'll be improving that in the future, kind of over the summer. And we want to make that kind of a living tool where you guys can actually go in and update your projects whenever you feel like it, and not just when there's a major call for projects and you have to scramble and so forth. So we hope that'll be a resource for you where you can, at any time, you can look at your projects and see how they're described and make updates to cost and things like that as you need. But right now, we've got what you entered, projects that fit the bill for CIP, meaning they're a capital project, that are seeking funding or seeking to go to construction in the next 7 years and have shortfalls in funding. Those are in the draft CIP. I encourage you to take a look at it. They're grouped by jurisdiction or by sponsor. We are going through it kind of project by project and comparing it to last year's CMP just to make sure that all the projects we think should have made the cut did make the cut. We know there are some projects that fell off from last year's, and so we'll be contacting the sponsors of those projects to make sure that they should have fallen out. One query in the database that we used this year that we weren't using in the past was if the project has no cost associated with it, it was left out of the list. So those projects, I will be contacting you especially to get costs, because one of our rules is that if you don't have a cost, it doesn't go in the database, but they snuck through in the past. So this time they didn't make the cut, but we will follow up there. In terms of the CIP project list, it mostly matches, in terms of the dollar amounts by category, it mostly matches what was in the 2017 CIP, and you can see on page 6-4 of your packet, we kind of group them by category, and you can see the dollar amounts. Transit is the biggest category with about 50%, and that matches almost exactly where it was last time around. Let's see. Yeah, just about exactly, with rail rapid transit, which is mostly BART being the number one category in there, and then bus, and then ferry. The second biggest category is arterial and roadways with about 17%. And then interchanges and freeways coming in at 8 and 9% respectively. Other decent-sized categories are the bike ped category and the operations category. But like I said, we'll be following up on some projects. Some projects might fall out, some might get added through the draft. So this will change. Whether it'll go up or down from $17.2 billion, I'm not sure at this point, but it probably will change by the time we get to the final. So, like I said, if you look through that project list and see any issues, feel free to reach out to me. Also, if you decide to crack open the full document and see anything you'd like to change, feel free to let me know. We reference a lot of local projects in the various chapters in the document, and various efforts that are going on around the county. So if there's any projects or efforts you feel are outdated, or there's something shiny and new that you'd like mentioned in the CMP, you can let me know as well. In terms of where we go from now, once it's released for circulation and review in July by the authority, it'll be out for comment through October 4th. Then we'll submit our draft final to MTC. They'll make sure it looks good, give us any comments, and then we take that back to our board for final adoption and then final submittal to MTC. And that happens in December. So that's the process for now. Like I said, you'll have a few months to provide any comments on the draft that can be incorporated into the final. But the recommendation today is to forward to the Planning Committee and Authority Board for release to any interested parties, and go from there. Thank you.
Questions? Any questions? No? All right. I guess we're looking for a motion to approve and forward the draft to the Planning Committee.
Move to approve and forward to the committee.
Second?
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, absolutely.
Matt, you were talking about if we have any comments or anything, but we're also at this time it looks like we're about to take a vote to push it forward. How did that?
Do you have comments today?
Like,
Is that what you're asking?
Small, yeah.
Oh, sure, yeah.
No, I mean, I don't have anything yet to add, but I mean, you're saying
Is this our last chance?
yes. Yeah.
We bring the final to you. Is that what you're asking?
Oh, okay. So there's still, I mean, if I'm finding something wrong here, I can.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing
yeah.
major.
Oh, yeah. No, you have till October to
Okay,
give me
okay.
any comments that can make it into the
Gotcha.
final.
Yeah, that's what I was hearing. I'm like, oh, okay, no problem. And then all of a sudden, wait, taking a vote to push it forward, like, wait a minute. So,
Yeah.
sorry for my confusion.
Yeah, it'll come back.
So, any other questions? If not, we're looking for a second. Aaliyah will second. And all in favor? Aye. And opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Next item, item 7, monitoring report and quarterly project status report, Measure J. And anyway, that's James.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. As some of you know, and for those of you who don't, James Hinkamp, CCTA. I'll start by stating that this report doesn't typically come before this committee, but we felt that it was an opportune time at this stage to share this information since many of you are involved in directly involved in the implementation of these projects. And so it's also been a couple years since the last call for projects. So what is before you is really a dual report, and the first part is a monitoring report of the Transportation for Livable Communities and Pedestrian, Bicycle, and Trail Facilities programs, TLC and PBTF. The monitoring report really provides a statistical analysis of program performance in terms of the programming, the appropriations, the project delivery, and the invoicing, both the volume and the rates of each of those categories. And it breaks it down by each of the sponsors and the number of grants that they are involved with, and also the value of their projects and so forth. So there's that part, and then there is also the quarterly project status report, the QPSRs, and these are more frequent, typically forwarded to the Planning Committee and Authority, just to keep them abreast of where projects stand. And this is composed of fact sheets. And some of you should have, or all of you hopefully should have received phone calls or emails from either myself or a consultant, just asking where you may be, any reasons for either delays or advancement to the next stage, just so that we are also equally informed and can assist as needed. Really, just to share some highlights, there were 83 projects that have been approved for programming under TLC and PBTF since these programs were introduced. And countywide, almost half of them have completed at this point. So 40 out of 83 are complete. Another 43 are either ongoing or soon to be appropriated in the next couple years. In fact, 28 have been appropriated, 15 are programs, but yet to be appropriated of the 43 that are outstanding or not yet complete. But at this point, staff recommends that the committee accept these reports and forward to the Planning Committee for further review and approval. And I'm certainly available for any questions.
Thank you, James. Any questions?
I had a question. When is the next call for projects for the TLC and PBD?
It's still to be determined. The strategic plan is being updated this year, and along with that, we have revenue projections that we're keeping our eye on. Much of it will be based on the degree of confidence that we can accumulate enough to develop a robust call. I think when in 2016-17 the last call occurred, the idea was that perhaps another 5 years out in 2021 or 22 it may happen. But we don't want to necessarily guarantee anything right now, depending on economic cycles. But we could say sometime perhaps in the early to mid-decade 20s.
All right, any other questions, comments? If not, I guess we're looking for a motion to accept the reports and forward to the planning committee and board.
Make a motion.
Thank you, Kevin. And a second, all in favor? Aye. And opposed? The motion passes. Other business? Nothing?
I have a
Yes, Leah.
question about other business. Maybe we can get an update on the authority's action from last night's board meeting?
Oh. Matt? Were you there? Was anybody there? James?
Yeah, we were both there.
Well, we can say Don Tatson has been retained by the authority to, as basically an expert consultant to help the staff, including Tim Hale, who's Deputy Executive Director of Project, to help lead this effort. I would say that objectively there was robust discussion among the commissioners in terms of looking at the funding program categories, and I recall that the primary discussion was around the percentages allocated or proposed to be allocated to modes that are alternative to the single occupancy vehicle. There was discussion about whether that should be greater than 50% for transit and alternative modes, and then also discussion around the percentage of local return to source. I believe that the initial draft will start with a 15% return to source percentage, and I think analysis is also forthcoming that will explain how that breaks down, because there is also SB1 supplement now with the passage with that legislation a year and a half ago. I don't know if you want to add.
Yeah, and just to expand on that 15%, how that would work as proposed is that since Measure J runs through 2034, the 18% return to source would continue through 2034. From the time if the new measure passes starting in 2020, you would get approximately 12% of the new measure as return to source, and then after 2034, when Measure J expires, that would go up to 18%. So that 15% is an average over the life of the new measure. Yeah.
I'm sorry, when you say 15%, I thought it was 15.2%.
It is. That's the. No, I was gonna mention that those aren't exact percentages. But yes, the 15.2 is an average between the 12 point whatever and the 18 point whatever. We don't have our official information in front of us today. So for a time there would be 30+%, between 2020 and 2034. We know the Public Managers Association is pushing for a higher number, about 23. So those discussions will, take place over the next few months with the cities to see. But our board definitely supported the 15% average.
And then one other note.
Can I ask a quick question to follow up to that first point, though? I know TransPac, the TAC and the board both wanted 23%. I'm hearing that Transplan wanted the same. What about the other RTPCs?
Leah wants to comment on WIC tax, but
I don't have it put to memory, but I want to say it was like 12 to 15. We're a low liar.
I know they said they were okay with I think they said they were okay with the proposal for 15, the average, but yeah. And
For La Miranda, for SWAT, La Miranda seemed to support 15%, and the South is seeking for more.
And the only other thing I would add is that if there's curiosity about like the starting point for for this initial TEP. There was polling that was done in early May. If you have not seen that report, a lot of the percentages that are the initial percent allocations are based on the result of early polling, and it was expressed or reiterated last night that there is strong demand for better and more reliable transit and things related categories. So,
Yeah, right now that category that James mentioned, the transit and bike ped, the alternative modes, I think is around 48, 49%. But the commissioners last night spoke to the fact that they would like it to be over 50%, as James mentioned. But that, West County is basically at 75%. And they thought if other subregions got it up to 55% or so, that would kind of hit. They were thinking somewhere around 60% is what the public wants. But that may or may not happen from the other subregions. So that was just kind of an ask from the board. Anything else you can think of, James?
I think that covered it.
So,
But the draft is 15%. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. What goes out to the public will have the 15%, but we know we need to get the RTPCs and the cities on board. So there will be discussions.
so do you know how soon a revised draft from last night's actions will be available?
Yeah, for the next meeting is scheduled for July 10th, so there will be something available for that. There's an ad hoc committee meeting in the meantime. We're triple teaming you, actually.
What I was trying to add to the 15% was the board approved to include 15% in the draft. They didn't approve that it is 15%. I think they approved it being on the draft for comments. And then there's an ad hoc to consolidate all the comments to put in the comments in the draft, and the ad hoc meetings meeting the first week of July, I think, before July 4th.
Is the ad hoc meeting open, or is it going to be just the members that?
I think they kept it as the first ad hoc meet. They had formed an ad hoc meeting. Ad hoc group. So I think they're using the same group.
Okay. And who are the members?
I think it was
It's one from each
RTPC. So it's only 4.
I believe so. And then two
Oh,
supervisors, I think.
Yeah, or maybe just one.
I think it's Mitch Cobb.
Do you think I can?
I think from my recollection.
Or is it online?
Glover, Hudson. Yeah, we can probably get you the actual names rather than give you wrong information.
And then I wasn't at the last night's meeting, my colleague was, but so he mentioned that there'll be another meeting to be able to integrate the comments. So that's the July 10th meeting you're referencing?
Yes.
So is there a listing of all the dates that are coming up?
Yeah, it was in the authority packet last night.
So that stands as it was last night? Okay.
Right.
Thank
right.
you.
So there's a July 10th, July 17th, and then August 7th, 14th, and 21st.
Thanks.
And the 21st is when the draft would be adopted.
So you might not know the answer to this, but how was the whole project list and the percentages developed? Because it feels like it was, like we never heard about it at this group that I remember. It was never here. Maybe it wouldn't ever be here, but I'm just curious because I know last time there was a big debate on the percentages, and there was a lot of issue. We went round and round on that, and I think we landed at 23.8 for return to source or something like that. It was pretty high.
Yeah, so Hisham went around to the RTPCs over the last few months. They started with the Measure X projects and allocations and really used that as a starting point. And the tax discussed it. Many of you guys were part of those discussions. And then that went to the boards. So it was an RTPC by RTPC decision.
I'll just editorialize here. I was at the PMA meeting, and there was just ad hoc presentation about how our PCI levels are still down and that SB1 was supposed to not be, it was supposed to have a maintenance of effort requirement, right? So it was supposed to be a supplement, not that it was going to substitute for other monies. And so there was this big push for, hey, in fact, they were saying 50% of the roadways in the population has a PCI below 60 or something like that. So it was, they had the whole statistical, and so they were forming an ad hoc committee at the PMA level to come back and talk to CCTA.
So regarding the PCI at the CCAC meeting earlier, I distributed a draft PCI report that shows, hopefully that helps inform, I don't know if it's 60 or whatever, I think each city is different, but county-wide, we're at 67 network average for the county. No, actually 70, in Bay Area 67, sorry, misspoke. So that's just providing that information because he pointed it.
Any other comments or questions? If not, thank you, Matt, James, and Stephanie. That was a very helpful update. All right, any other business? If not, we'll adjourn to the next meeting on July 18th. Thank you. All right.
So are you guys pushing for 18% and you're
23%.
23%?
Yep, that's what the TAC recommended that the board actually wanted us to come up with different scenarios for 18, 15, 18, and 23%, and divvy up the money that way. So we did that. We took some money from park. We took some money from local roads. So we have those different categories. And then we have those different scenarios.
Pittsburgh is part of the East or
Transplant, yeah, East County. Okay. Yep. So we gave, that's going back to the board on the 27th, transplant. And they're going to, and we also recommended that they choose the 23% scenario. Okay. We'll see what happens.
Oh, it's interesting to see.
Believe me, Pittsburgh really wants more money for